great to see you, Joe, at Collectomania. You've been in so many great shows and films over the years. Let's start off with Game of Thrones. What was it like becoming a Then Warg?
I had to get really method for that role. I spent a lot of time eating human beings, barbecuing mostly, a little bit of, oregano and some curry spices. They taste great. A good thigh with some curry spices. No, please don't believe a word I'm saying. I'm really blessed to be part of Game of Thrones. It was such a fun role to play. And, when I was asked to send in the tape by my manager for the role, I got incredibly excited. And then when I found out I was in the show, I was like, oh my God, I'm in Game of Thrones. That's ridiculous. So, yeah, fantastic time shooting that in Iceland and in Northern Ireland. And just feel really blessed to be part of that.
Now, tell me a little bit about that bird of prey that you have when we first see you, and tell me about the makeup as well, because it's very striking the way the Thens look, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the makeup is incredibly exciting. The makeup artists on Game of Thrones are amazing. They basically work out of a trailer. And, I mean, we were on a location, whether it be in Iceland or Belfast, and we're miles away from the actual studio. So they're doing these incredible makeups, basically in the back of a trailer, and I don't know how they do it. They make us all look so scary and so incredible. And one of the most exciting things about this role was being able to work with the owl. And as soon as I found out, I love animals. Most actors are scared of working with children and animals. I love it. If a role requires working with kids or with animals, I'm more likely to do the role because I just adore animals and children. But I said to Dan and Dave when I met them at Comic-Con last year before I even started working on the show, that I'm really excited about meeting the owl. And it was really built up that I would meet the owl. But unfortunately, our little furry creature couldn't make it to Iceland for the first batch of shooting because he couldn't get his passport in order. So I had to work with a little stuffed friend. But he was great. But then we got to Ireland and I was even more excited. I thought, maybe this time I'll get to work with the owl, and they scheduled a day for me. But it was such a busy shooting schedule that I never actually got to meet the owl. And I was really upset. I was like, I want to meet the owl. It just never happened. So I get to vicariously meet the owl through watching the show because I know he was there on my shoulder in theory. And that warms my heart.
What moments have you enjoyed most watching the show back?
The moments I enjoy most are the ones that haven't aired yet. The best stuff is yet to come with the Thens and the Wildlings. And I won't say too much about what happens, but let's just say it gets messy real fast. So
how much are you looking forward to seeing that?
I'm incredibly excited because obviously I was there for the shooting, and it was very, very tough shooting. It was all location shooting at night. All the rain and the mud that you're going to see is real, and it was very, very hard work, but incredibly fun and challenging. So I'm incredibly excited to see the work, and I got to work with some amazing people. I mean, Kit Harington's amazing. I loved working with Kit, Rose Leslie, Christoph Hivju, who plays Tormund. Such a fantastic group of people to work with, so blessed. And so I'm as excited as anyone else to actually see what it's finally going to look like, the final cut. I wish they would, because we don't get to see it beforehand. They don't show us, so I'm going to be watching it live with everybody else. I cannot wait. I'm really excited.
Now, we've seen along the way through the 4 seasons and this season some crazy deaths in Game of Thrones, haven't we? Which do you think has been the best death so far in season 4?
I have to say, I don't know if it was the best death, but definitely the most satisfying was seeing Joffrey get it. I mean, come on, Jack Gleeson is one of the loveliest people you would ever know. I'm sure you've heard this a million times. But he plays literally one of the most hated people on camera. And watching him die was beautiful, just beautiful. But I think the best deaths so far in season 4 was the fight in the tavern. That, to me, that scene, I watched that scene several times over. I just kept rewinding it and kept rewatching it. And obviously I've met Maisie and Rory, and they're two hilariously lovely people. And to see them playing those roles the way they do and doing that scene, and it was just delicious to watch. But there are going to be some great deaths coming up, which I cannot mention.
We cannot wait. Now, if you had to meet your maker on the show, how would you like to die?
I want to be killed by a dragon.
Yeah.
That's the only way the best way to die in this show is to be burnt alive by a dragon. Let's face it. I mean, come on. I've been killed many great ways in all of the work that I've done. But I think to be killed by a dragon, I'm still waiting. Yeah, that would be my favorite.
You also work with Rose Leslie on Game of Thrones, who plays Ygritte. She's
Rose.
Fantastic.
I love her to death. She's one of the sweetest people ever. And I have some behind the scenes footage of her, which I will never release publicly. But every time I watch it, Rose, it absolutely puts a smile on my face. That footage of you practicing shooting the bow and arrow in Castle Black just is some of the most hilarious stuff ever. But she's adorable. I love Rose.
What is it about that character that people have taken to so much?
I have no idea. Probably because at the time, I know when I watched it as an audience member, as a viewer, it's like, what are you doing? Why are you shooting him? You love him. I mean, obviously there's a conflict in the character, and she's first and foremost a wildling, and he's, Night's Watch, and he's the enemy. But she's in love with him, and there's all that conflict. But still, love always comes first. You don't shoot the person you love. When I was sitting there watching, I was like, what are you doing? What are you... It's like a woman scorned. Never, never, never. So, yeah, I think that's why it's, And also the great thing about Rose is she sounds nothing like that in real life. She speaks very proper. She has a beautiful voice and a beautiful, not posh, but she speaks very well. And so she puts on this northern accent, and it's hilarious to listen to her, and it's just like, it's great. I love it. You know nothing, Jon Snow.
She's really nailed it, and you've really nailed that as well.
I've been working on it.
And finally, as a fan of the show, of course, you've got so many great characters. Ones I think about this season have been Tywin and Joffrey. What have been your standout moments for Tywin and Joffrey in the various seasons we've had so far of Game of Thrones?
God, it's difficult. There have been so many. I think just about every time they come on screen. I think when Joffrey kills Ross, that to me was just... That was evil. That was pretty bad. But I think his best moment, though, between the two of them was actually at his wedding. That little banter between him and Peter Dinklage right before he gets poisoned is quite literally some of the best stuff I've seen. I love it to death. But my favorite Peter Dinklage stuff is with Charles Dance. There's a particular scene where he's speaking to Charles Dance, and they're having this scene, and he's telling him that, I wish that you had never been born. You're the only reason you're alive is because you share my name, and that's about it. It was one of the most horrific things I've ever seen on screen. That father-son, and some of the best acting I think I've seen, period, anywhere. And I will always quote that as being, I think, my favorite scene in all 4 seasons, period, so far.
Who would you like to, in the end, see on the Iron Throne? And if you could swap roles with any other character in the show, who would you like to play?
I think I'm closest. If I had to play any character, it would be Peter Dinklage's character. Because personally, that's the character I'm closest to. For many, many reasons. The misunderstood person, who, because of the way they look, has been judged in a certain way. And that's what I can identify with the most. Or possibly the Hound. Again, very similar kind of character, but from a different side of the fence. Very misunderstood character, but very straightforward. When he speaks, he says the C word more times in one episode than I think I have in my whole life. But we'd all like to do that, wouldn't we? There's a certain straightforwardness about the Hound that just cracks me up every time he opens his mouth. But I think, yeah, if I had to play any characters in that show, it would either be I'd swap with Peter or with Rory.
And who would you like on that throne?
I think Maisie should be on the throne.
Well, it's been lovely to speak to you, Joe. Thanks very much.